I want to try making a wooden flipper to replace this black plastic one. I've made wooden utensils before, but only flat ones. And of course a flipper has a substantial bend in it. And of course it is still, needs to be very thin and flexible. So to deal with that bend, I think I'm going to try two things. First, I'm just going to glue up a bunch of wood to make a nice, thick, chunky piece. And then the next thing will be, I'm going to take two pieces of wood and glue them at an angle to see how that works. Now, of course, you cook with this, so it's near heat and it's near water, both of which are not really good for glue. So I realize this is very much an experiment. But considering that I have a shop full of tools, I figure, if it falls apart in 6 months, I'll make another one. And in the meantime, I'll keep an eye out for a nice thick chunk of solid wood. I just don't have any like 2.5-inch thick chunks of maple right now. For the thick blank, I've got some recycled bits of maple here that I'm going to plane down to make clean, and then I'll clamp and glue them together. And these turned out well, so let's get them all glued up. And for the piece that I'm going to glue at an angle, I've got this piece of maple, which is long enough for the handle and wide enough that I can cut it in half and use part of it for the spatula. I did quickly put this through the planer to clean it up, but now we're going to rip it like that. So now let's take these boards and let's see, I want an angle like that. So let's figure out what that is. Yeah, that should do it. And wow, that is completely the widest angle I can go on the miter gauge. But that does work. That goes right there. Let's lock that into place. This cut was pretty clean, but I'm still going to take it to my disc sander to see if I can get it really nice and smooth. Now it did occur to me that trying to clamp something like this is going to be tough, but I then realized I don't have to. So if I put the two pieces together like this, and if you hold the spatula there, you can see that I'm going to cut away this and this. So I'm going to just put some nails through there to hold as clamping. Let me just get a quick rough trace on the pencil so I don't have to hold this also. This is somewhat end grain, so I'm just going to put some glue on there and let it sit for a minute or a moment. And then I will probably put on a bit more. Let's position this and get your fingers out of the way. All right, it definitely slipped a bit from where I had it positioned, but in fact, I think it's a little crooked too, but hopefully it's going to work out. So I cut some more scraps on the miter saw and I put some sandpaper on the back. And my idea was just get a little bit of clamping on here. And we will just let this be for a while, and hopefully that's a good joint. And after it's dry, I'll just clean it up on the joiner. Now I'm going to take this and trace it as best I can, and I'm realizing that my blank is actually a little bit on the short side. Good thing this is an experiment. That should do. And at the same time, I took this one out of clamps and we're going to trace the shape on this one also. So we'll have this seam right here. Hopefully the glue will do its job. And so first I'm going to bandsaw it out this way, and then later I'll bandsaw this shape. This is a pretty thick chunk of wood, so it took a really long time to cut through it the whole way. As you can see, I sped up the footage a lot. I wanted to show the entire cutting process, but each cut was over 2 minutes in length. Here I'm just finishing up the first side. So while I did want to show the entire process, I also thought it would not be nice to ask you to sit through over 4 minutes of bandsawing. And I skipped showing the full cut on the second one. So unfortunately, I was halfway through cutting this one when I remembered the brad, so I might have damaged my bandsaw blade on that. But so I paused and quickly cut out the 2 pieces of wood that had the brads in it, and then I proceeded with finishing the cut. So we're about halfway our attempts to make one of these. With the solid blank, we cut that away, and then we have this piece, which we now need to trace out our flipper on. And with the angled piece, we've also cut this away, and we've ended up with something that is much the same. The only difference is where there's the glue line. So, more tracing, more cutting. So we got some more bandsawing, and then a lot of sanding to do. The wood is much thinner now, so it cut a lot quicker. Only a bit over 1.5 minutes to cut out both sides, but I still sped up the footage. I might also want to look at getting a newer, sharper blade. Oh, there's 1, and there's 2. So far that's gone even better than I could have hoped. Now there's still an awful lot of sanding to do to turn this into a pleasing shape, and I want to make this as thin as possible. I mean, there's no way I'm going to get it this flexible, but I mean, as long as you can get it under your fried eggs, that's sort of the idea, so that it's useful as a replacement for this black plastic thing. So I think I'm going to start on my belt sander here, because I think this is the part that I'm most interested in. So I'm going to be doing a lot of flattening and try to make it a little bit thin near the edge, and then we can worry about shaping the rest of the handle, because that should be pretty straightforward. But I'm not sure how much I can show you now, because it's just a lot of sanding. And then I use the spindle sander for getting into the corners and rounding the edges of the handle. The strip sander is very aggressive, so I just use that for when I needed to remove a lot of wood to shape the handle. And of course there was some hand sanding to finish things off. So after a lot of sanding, I'm going to go with the salad wool finish. Something simple, easy to reapply if you want. I don't know how often you guys touch up the finish on your wooden spoons, but let's start with it looking nice anyways. This is a mix of beeswax and mineral oil. Easy to apply, wipe it on, buff it out. If you ever want to do any more, just sand it down and apply some more. This is what I put on all my cutting boards. So let's take a close look at these for a moment. So first off, here's the original black plastic one. The handle bends a lot. The spatula will flex down when you are pushing like that. This is the one that was made with 2 pieces of wood, and it actually, I like the look of this one better. There's a seam here, and there's a seam here, so yeah, this may be a weak spot. We will see. The handle actually has a little bit of flex here in this narrowest spot. The spatula part, the flipper part, whatever you want to call it, there's a little bit of bend to it. I tried to make it really thin, but we'll try in a little bit to see how it works in a frying pan. This is the one that was made by stacking up 4 boards, and yeah, I don't really like the looks of it. There's a seam here, there's a seam there, there's a seam here, and in the handle you can see here's a seam which then comes around to here on the other side. Yeah, am I going to see this in a few months? I don't know, but I don't really like the looks of it right now. Otherwise, again, it's got a little bit of bend to it. So they look good. Now I should put them to work. And yes, I'm intentionally fiddling with it a lot because I want to just see how easy it is to slide it around. And so for me, I think the only remaining question is how they perform over the long term. And for that, we're just going to have to wait and see. I'll update the video description if things change.